So, with that in mind, we created then what we're calling Couples One Workshop. And the Couples One Workshop is created to help bring some stability and safety in a situation where there feels like there isn't much of it at all. And so some of the real themes of that first workshop are around safety and honesty. And there's this idea of building safety within ourselves first. We do a lot of work around helping us regulate our nervous systems, some helpful breathing techniques, a variety of things to find equilibrium where there's been so much of chaos.
Welcome to the Faithful and True podcast. We're here again today with Dr. Greg Miller and his wife, Beth Miller. Happy to have you both back with us today. How are you doing?
We're doing well.
Doing great.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Well, we asked Beth and Greg to rejoin the podcast today as we are going to delve into the uniqueness of Faithful and True's two couples journey workshops. We have added a second version, and they're both unique to each other and what they are kind of the couples at what stage in their recovery each of these workshops will be most beneficial. So, Greg, I'll let you jumpstart the conversation about these couples workshops.
Yeah. Well, first we can talk about the reality that we see that there are two different stages or phases in couples recovery. And I think Mark and Deb and all of their work with couples over the years began to see that these different stages exist. The first one is really about having or helping a couple kind of stabilize. They're doing an assessment of what's been going on. This is a time when there's getting some clarity and information. The wife is discovering the nature of the husband's acting out and the implications of that. And really, the focus is about looking towards creating a structure that can then, in some ways, support the current circumstances that the couple find themselves in. And so, what we have done is created a workshop that specifically helps a couple in that first season. So, Beth, what are some of the other kind of indicators that someone is in the first season or the first phase of the process for couples?
Yeah. In that first season, there's typically so much just lack of equilibrium. Like everything feels rocky. You're not sure where solid ground is, and it takes a while to find it. Triggers are common and frequent, and there's a real lack of feeling safe. Basically, there's often, I think for the spouse, a sense if she's gotten, or he, this can go either way, when the spouse gets a discovery, a disclosure, it can really just turn their world upside down. So much of what they thought was reality wasn't. And that creates so much internal chaos
Right.
and often external, to be honest.
Well, and I think part of it is this is when the sense of reality and trust is really broken and shattered. As a spouse is getting information, in some cases, they really had no indication. Maybe at times they had a little bit of an understanding. Maybe they had some understanding of their spouse's acting out behavior, but there's some new information that is just so disruptive that now you're questioning the ability to trust your spouse. But you're also can be trusting your ability to perceive reality. You know, it's kind of that question of what is real. I thought this perception of my spouse was real. I thought this was the nature of our relationship. Now I'm discovering that what I thought was real is not real. And so it really is disorienting when someone is questioning their ability to perceive reality and even questioning what is real in the context of their relationship.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we created then what we're calling Couples One workshop. And the Couples One workshop is created to help bring some stability and safety in a situation where there feels like there isn't much of it at all. And so some of the real themes of that first workshop are around safety and honesty. And there's this idea of building safety within ourselves first. We do a lot of work around helping us regulate our nervous systems, some helpful breathing techniques, a variety of things to find equilibrium where there's been so much chaos and feeling out of a sense of alignment.
I would say that part of what we're wanting to do is help create a way to reclaim that structure and even address the logistics of the relationship. Kind of this thing has happened. How do we live now? And what
Yeah.
are some of the basic questions of how do we function? How are we going to function financially? How are we going to function logistically? Are we going to be in the same house? Are we going to be in the same bedroom? Are we going to be in different spaces? How do we even make those decisions as to what we need? And so it really is kind of acknowledging this chaotic environment. And one of the images I use is our life exploded in August of 2005. And then what happened was later that month is when Hurricane Katrina came on shore. And I often, as I was driving around, going to appointments, looking for a job, I would listen to the reports about Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath. And what was so apparent was there was so much damage done to the store, the town, to the community, that people were just trying to determine what do we do next.
Yeah.
My house has been flooded. My property is no longer what it once was. How do I even respond to what I'm seeing? And that's part of what we want to support couples with in Couples Journey One is kind of answering the question, what's next? How do we live? How do we move forward? How do we determine, kind of like what are some of the factors that we use to determine how we're going to move forward?
Mm-hmm. I polled some of the participants of our Journey One workshop from this past June and asked, what was this like for you? What stands out to you? That sort of thing. And I loved this. One of the participants said, I wasn't interested in the couples hoop or the couples relationship, if you're not familiar with that term, or even spending time together, but I was eager to learn about myself and how I can grieve wisely. And what's also true is in that first workshop, there's a lot of emphasis on doing our own work in our own lane or hoop, as we say at Faithful and True. And at the Couples One workshop, we're kind of doing that work side by side. We are there with our partner, and yet we're not necessarily ready to turn towards our partner and do a lot of deep relational work. We're doing this foundational rebuilding, right? Creating some guardrails and a sense of equilibrium. And we're doing it more side by side. But yet, even in that, we're starting to create the possibility of what that could be like for us to be together.
Yeah, I think that, kind of the as we were even talking about creating a Couples One workshop, we talked about the fact that at this point, people may be functioning very independently. And so therefore to be engaging the relationship may not necessarily be helpful, because whatever is true, a lot of the couples that come, especially the spouses, they're still in that place of big reactions, big pain, big hurt. And
Yeah.
it's not helpful to spend time together in a closed space. And so we really wanted to create a space where people came in as individuals in the context of their coupleship. But like you said, it's not turning towards, it's just being next to as we figure out
Hmm.
what it looks like for us to move forward.
Yeah. Another really helpful piece of the Couples One workshop is sort of the roadmap of what the next 5 or so years is going to look like. I remember when I learned that it's about a 5 year or so process of work to reestablish the coupleship. I was by myself reading a book at home, and that just felt so overwhelming as I read that. Um, it, it, it didn't change the fact that it was true, but it's also when I think about the difference of what that could have been like for us to have been in a room with other couples in the first year or two ish, there's not a real specific timeline on this, but in those early stages, hearing it in a safe environment with leaders who have walked that road. Chris and Elizabeth Hardesty, some of our colleagues, do such a great job of teaching that in that workshop of here's what these next 5 years can look like, some of the stages, and then, and this is so hopeful, some of the resources that you can access to support you as you're in those stages. Again, with a lot of emphasis in that first year or two in uh, honesty and building safety. I think safety just really encapsulates that experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like your house has been destroyed by this storm, and now you're standing with your contractor with a blueprint of what it's going to take to build
Yeah,
something new in that space. And we're kind of the contractors. We bring the blueprint, and we can't guarantee that the house is going to be rebuilt or a structure is going to be created because that's up to the couple and their willingness to commit and their capacity and their openness. But we do want to say there is a way forward, that there is a blueprint, and we can encourage, we can support. We have done this. We have rebuilt a structure destroyed by a storm. So we know it experientially, we know it professionally, and that's one of the
yeah,
things that we want to offer, that there is a way forward, and everyone gets to decide whether or not they want to invest and choose it.
yeah. So that's Couples One, and it
Okay.
is a 2 day workshop, and we're offering it for now twice a year.
Okay. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the second season.
Mhm.
So, how do I know when I'm transitioning to the second season where it goes from focusing on the structure or logistics to now we're focusing more on our relationship and working to create intimacy and connection in the context of our coupleship?
Yeah. I would say once there is a greater trust in the one who is recovering from addiction, from their a greater trust in their sobriety, in their honesty, and there's been, a lot of safety that's been created with regular truth telling and honesty, then often the partner will feel more freedom to turn towards, right? To start investing in the relationship. It's safer to invest in the relationship. And even early on, we can begin to start seeing some things in the one who's dealing with the addiction. We can start experiencing them differently, right? And seeing that there is some new life, some just new ways of doing marriage and living together that are really possible. And so that it's not that there's just a switch that gets flipped. It's not linear. But when we begin to see more of that hope, we start practicing, right? Some of these new ways together, then we know we're kind of shifting into this second phase.
Right. And I would say that it is the spouse who has been betrayed that determines when they're ready to step into the next phase. That because they were the ones that experienced the destruction of the addiction and the betrayal from the addiction, it's almost as if they get to acknowledge, okay, I'm now open to being open to the possibility of us moving back towards each other. And
Yeah.
there's not a specific time frame on this, but really, kind of like what you've said, Beth, there has to be a sense of confidence
Yeah.
in the addict's commitment to recovery, the addict's sobriety. And again, like you said, the spouse needs to be experiencing their partner differently. I often say to the men I work with, your spouse doesn't want to be told you're different. Your spouse doesn't want you to demonstrate that you are different. Your spouse simply needs to experience you as different, and that's going to take some time in order for her to trust that.
Yeah. So the couples two workshop is it's our more traditional workshop that we've done for years. But I actually just love this new clarity that we're bringing to how this one is for, like we're saying here, the second phase really of recovery. And couples two really focuses more on a lot of healthy conversation. We teach some real practical skills around doing something called the iceberg. Listeners may be familiar with that, but it's a really healthy tool of helping us understand the many different responses that we can have when we're in communication with our partner. Um, we talk a lot about ways to keep rebuilding trust, um, the environment that we can create that allows for vulnerability with one another. And then hopefully that kind of ushers us into some real healthy intimacy with one another. And so in couples two, we'll talk about spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and sexual intimacy.
Well, and in fact, we have prerequisites for the workshops based upon helping couples to identify if they're ready. And in couples two, what we ask is that the husband has been to our workshop or has participated in a workshop somewhere, that there's been 60 days of sobriety. So there's been a length of sobriety, and that the wife is getting support or open to getting support, and that there's been full disclosure, that there's been an intentional effort to share the information about the sexual history and the sexual acting out. And so we even help couples to identify if those things are not in place, then we recognize that it's not best
Right.
for them to come to couples two. One of the questions that we get a lot is, if I've been to the men's workshop, does my wife have to come to the women's workshop to come to couples two? And what we would say, not necessarily, but what we do see is if couples have been to their individual workshops first, they really are able to get more out of the couples two experience because they have that individual support and they have an individual understanding of
Mm,
their journey that they can bring to this.
yeah.
One
I'm
thing just to note with couples one, our only requirement is that the man has been to our workshop specifically in order to
mhm.
participate in that, because we do know it's earlier in recovery and there can be a lot more chaos going on, but we do want there to be some understanding of recovery on the man's perspective by having been to our men's workshop.
Yeah.
And
It's
Greg, you're
interesting.
referencing the men's journey workshop, just so
Right.
that it's clear. Uh, our expectation is that they have attended the men's journey workshop.
Correct.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to go back to what you just said a second ago. One of the other participants he and his wife have done couples one and couples two. They've each also done the men's and the women's workshops. One of the things he said is that having done the men's workshop, then coming to the couples workshop, help him recognize how to take some of those tools and integrate them into his coupleship with his spouse. And you may hear some things that are similar, and there are a couple of things that are repeated in some of the workshops. And it's so different, right? What this individual work we're doing, that it's so helpful to then see how this gets layered. One of the things that I think we talked about couples one, that it's kind of like we're doing our own work side by side. We are there attending with our partner, but we're doing this work side by side. I think one of the distinctions with couples two is that we're beginning to feel safer and more freedom to start doing work together. We're turning towards one another. And I again, a quote from one of the participants, I love this. She said, at couples two, I felt like I could turn my whole self and really face my partner and understand how to know him and to be known. I thought that was such a beautiful way to word that. And rarely is that the space that a couple is in that first phase, when there's so much kind of chaos and unsafety.
Yeah. One thing I would say is I do think something that is common for both workshops is there is a validation for where you are. You know, that for the couples who come to couples journey one, in all of the chaos, in all of the pain, and all of the disruption, we can simply validate this makes sense. And there is something significant about that. We can easily, in our shame, believe we're the only one that is struggling, or that our reactions are too much, or we should be in a different place. And so there is something significant about being in a room, a community of couples that are early on, that are in some level of chaos, and to be validated in that. And then also in Journey Couples 2, we can validate this next season of being open to moving towards each other and being connected and trusting a little bit more. And then in a safe environment there at the workshop to actually try some skills. You know, one of the things that is different about Couples 2 is we really work on teaching skills, modeling skills, but then allowing the couple to practice those skills with each other and with some of the other people at the workshop. So it moves from just being maybe given some information and some clarity to now practicing in couples two what may be helpful when you go back home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Greg and Beth, this has been most helpful, and really appreciate you guys taking the time to help our viewers and our listeners, and even me. I now have a clear understanding of this distinction between the Couples Journey 1 and Couples Journey Workshop 2. I hope that our viewers and our listeners will be compelled to visit our website, faithfulandtrue.com, for more information. And in the case of our couples workshops, we need for you to call our office to register. Our men's and women's workshops, you're able to register online. For the couples workshops, in both cases, we need for you to give us a call at 952-746-3880 and talk to our administrative crew, Sherry or Kayla or myself, when you call, and we'll be more than happy to help you get registered for the couples workshop. So in the meantime, thanks again, Beth, for joining us. Thanks, as always, Greg, for your leadership. And we hope that those that have been watching have been inspired and deepened in their understanding of what we have to offer. As I said earlier, we invite you to visit our website, faithfulandtrue.com. For more information, for more resources, you'll find our online bookstore with all of the books that we have available, as well as over 550, we're approaching 600 podcasts such as this one that you'll be able to be inspired by. So in the meantime, we hope that this coming week for you will be a week that's filled with many blessings and with great vision.